Welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today is Kat Kanada from Twitter. She's someone I've been following for a while, and I'm really happy to have her on the show today. So Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Kat, there's a couple different reasons why I wanted to chat with you today. Like I just said, though, I have been following you for a while. You seem to have been kind of exploding on Twitter over the last year or so with regards to, posting a lot of, I guess, conservative media. So how did all this come about? How did you go from someone who's just posting on Twitter to now as, kind of being, a source of independent media on Twitter, at least?
Well, it happened by accident, I'll tell you that much. So I didn't use social media a whole lot before the pandemic. It was just like personal pictures, family, friends. And then when the pandemic hit, I just kind of furiously started posting anything and everything I could to try and counteract that fear narrative that they were pushing. And I had a lot of time to do it. And then my accounts just kind of grew. And then I made connections with people in the conservative spaces, in the independent media field. And kind of it became my job. I worked with a few conservative outlets. I still do. And that's just kind of how it got started. And then once Elon Musk took over Twitter, it felt like some reins were released and I could gallop a little bit. Some of my posts were getting traction. And then several years later, my account hit 100,000 on Twitter, which is pretty wild because I don't have YouTube. I'm not a media personality. I'm none of those things. I'm just a girl with a Twitter.
Okay. So why did you start, or why did you have these conservative views in the first place? Like you kind of said that, as soon as you got on Twitter, you were basically, outside of, the personal stuff that you did initially, you right away just got into posting sort of conservative media. So why did you have this conservative view right away?
Well, my conservative views came prior to me basically, being terminally online and trolling the libs and all that stuff and posting conservative content. I had, a political awakening maybe a decade or so ago. What happened?
Yeah.
So I've always had conservative values, but I have never come across a person who could articulate it really well until I came across a conservative media personality on YouTube who demolished a few mainstream media pushed narratives regarding, President Trump, some other hot button issues. She was able to articulate her pro-life position very aptly. And so when I saw someone else, so eloquently say the things they believe without fear and, crumbling a little bit of the mainstream media narrative, orange man bad. That's how I kind of got woken up a little bit to the mainstream media lies and, their left-leaning bias. And that was kind of the start of it. And then, as I said, when the pandemic hit, I kind of became terminally online, trying to, counter it a little bit with everything that I came across and sharing it to my own platforms. And here we are.
Okay, got you. And the things that you share, again, they're usually conservative, and you said that you had this awakening. What do you see now as the thing that conservatives need to stand up for the most? What do you think that you get the most gratification out of, say, posting, and what do you think is the most important sort of message that you're trying to get out there right now, if there is one thing?
Well, the thing that I would love to do is to be able to put more pressure on mainstream conservatives in Canada to take more principled stances on things like immigration, because our country cannot sustain the levels that are currently flooding our borders, because obviously it puts pressure on the rest of our hot button crises at the moment, like the housing crisis and the healthcare crisis. Obviously, an influx of about 1 million people or more per year is going to put a strain on those resources. So I'd like to see them, take a more firm stance on that. That is one thing. And The second one would probably be being more bold in criticizing the trans agenda, especially for the minors. I know Premier Smith in Alberta had passed or has introduced some legislation where people under the age of 18 cannot go through the radical medical transitioning. I would love to see that spread across Canada because obviously, minors are not capable of making these kinds of decisions. So I would say those two are probably the biggest ones. And just also as secondary, just in general, preaching the conservative message and everything socially, fiscally, all those things.
Yeah, I would say on the immigration side for sure, we can definitely feel it in the healthcare system. Like in London, Ontario, there are a lot of people here who, unfortunately don't speak, English very well. And, when you're going to the doctor and you're trying to have a conversation with someone and they don't speak the same language, that can take a lot of time then for that particular appointment. And that can, make it more difficult. And there's, scientific studies on this. You can go on PubMed and look up, language barriers and what it does. And, it does create a lot of issues. I even posted about it recently. There was unfortunately someone who actually had an abortion in the wrong person and they blamed it on a language barrier. So, yeah, it's crazy. I posted it. I think I posted it on my Twitter. I definitely posted it on my Instagram, but I think I posted it on my Twitter as well. So it's Azubi, I think, was the original person who posted it. So, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you are, letting people into the country. And I can tell you as someone who works in the healthcare system, we have felt some of the effects of immigration. And then what you said, too, about minors, again, that's, relates back to my profession in healthcare. So, I agree. I think that, children shouldn't be making these decisions. It's crazy that we allow, someone who's 12 years old or 14 years old to make these radical decisions, to take something that could affect them permanently, and very, very severely, So, in that regard, I think that, it's good for people to speak out. And I think it's really poor that, no one asked me my opinion about it. Like if you look at, various different medical associations that may say that, this certain association feels this way, but I don't really know who they're asking. I think they're maybe just asking a small pool of people, I think that more physicians are probably against this kind of care than a lot of people realize, but most of them, are just afraid of speaking out because if they do, they may lose their job or lose their license, and that creates a lot of difficulty for them. So, on both those points, I agree with you 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been somewhat disheartening to see how much medical professionals are silenced on this issue. And I've seen some really prominent detransitioners like Chloe Cole, say how she was completely fast-tracked and they were there to help when she wanted to go through with the transition. And then when she realized she had made a mistake, she had no support whatsoever. So it's heartbreaking to watch these stories. It's a shame that our healthcare professionals are muzzled by ideologues, by these ideologically possessed bodies that control the speech of physicians. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm certainly, disappointed with it. And I did see one thing though that did make me happy. I don't know if you saw it, but Danielle Smith, again, most of the positive news in Canada seems to be coming out of Alberta, did mention that she's going to have one of the physicians who is kind of outspoken about COVID do a review. So I'm interested to see what that review says and what comes out. And I imagine that, one of the things that they're going to say is that, they shouldn't have closed schools and they shouldn't have, closed so many small businesses. I think that was really detrimental on a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But there's more and more research now coming out regarding how it did affect schools and children children's intellectual capacity and their ability to learn. And, what were your thoughts on the lockdowns, and, and how did it affect you, as a mother, and how do you, see it as just like a citizen of Canada?
Yeah, so for the first few weeks, I wasn't sure what was going on. Then I saw that they were silencing doctors who were criticizing the approach. And this was maybe a few weeks into the whole thing. I saw doctors out of California being silenced. I saw Dr. I believe Simone Gold along with a few others speaking out and then being instantly demonized. So that obviously rang alarm bells in my head that there's something wrong here. They're not letting physicians speak. We're not following the science here. We're following political science here. And it was very nefarious. Lots of information came out. There's the whole Great Reset book from Klaus Schwab that mentions pandemics and its position in their 2030 plan. So I was onto it, fairly quickly. We just continued our life as normal. Once I realized it was all BS, we just did our thing. We went to the playground, we went to visit family, defied the mask orders wherever possible. So it was probably a lot easier for me than for someone who maybe bought into the whole thing, because people were terrified. I lost friends. People reached out to me via social media saying they lost family members. It was sad watching it all. And I frankly couldn't believe that this was happening in a Western country, considering my parents gave up everything to bring us here to the free West from Soviet Union. And then to see censorship, and then to see the second-class citizen label stuck for the unvaccinated and all of that, it was a wild time. I could hardly believe what was going on.
And so what do you think, in terms of comparing like Russia and, Canada, like what does your family say about it now?
My family is not as politically involved as I am. My mom just shakes her head when I tell her what's going on. She doesn't watch the news, but when I say, "Mom, can you believe this? There's like censorship, there's this, there's that." She's like, "They're all crazy. They're crazy." They've lost their minds.
But do they ever like reflect and say like, "Oh, this was like, this time in Russia," or like this was, do they ever say anything to that effect, or do they just kind of...
Yeah. So when I tell her the news of the day, when I tell her what the liberals are doing, when I show her what's happening, she just says, "Yeah, that's pretty familiar." She laments about it, maybe not as much as I do, because she's getting up in her years, and but yeah, it's horrifying, and it's mostly people that are from these Eastern Bloc countries that were communist countries that are sounding the alarm bell. And what was most frustrating to us is watching Canadians call us crazy conspiracy theorists and saying, "Oh, nothing's happening. No, there's no communist flags here, nothing like that." They ridiculed us. And I'm just thinking, you guys don't see what's happening right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I've noticed that too, and I think that's a pattern, because we don't notice it because it's not a pattern for us. Like we're just sort of blind to it. But this is a movie that you said like most Eastern Europeans have kind of seen before, and so now they're it's still in your mind, like you've seen it before. So what you're seeing now is something that's unfolding, and obviously it's going to be upset you because the consequences of it, whereas a lot of people here are really unaware of the consequences. So with that being said, with the way things are now, like how much worse do you think things can get?
Well, things can get worse if a lot more citizens in Canada don't wake up to what's going on, because people have seemed to just accept everything that was pushed down our throats during the lockdowns and the mandates. And you didn't see as I personally didn't see as much pushback as I would have liked. Eventually there was the Freedom Convoy 2 years later. I was just hoping that, there would be a lot more civil disobedience. And there was, voices, recognizable voices calling for that online on social media. But when I ventured out into the world, 95, 98% of the people were compliant with the mask mandates. Everyone followed the little arrows, because they thought they were doing something. And so that part was a bit disheartening. I'm hoping that in the last few years, a lot more people kind of woke up to it. And I guess maybe you are seeing a little bit of that now, considering, for example, how well Poilievre is doing in the polls. He's in supermajority territory, and Trudeau can't go anywhere without being jeered, booed at, all those things. So I have some hope, given the current political climate. I just think Canadians need to kind of jump to action a bit sooner next time something like this happens, because now we have proven to the government that we will just comply. The majority of people will comply. Under pressure, they will buckle. They'll submit to the vaccine mandates, so, and I hope, because memories are so short these days, I hope that this sticks in people's memories and it's not just memory hold, so the next time it comes around, everyone just, jumps on board and goes, yeah, sure, lock me down.
So in BC, so you guys right now have an NDP provincial government, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so you would think then a lot of people there then would not be voting for Pierre. Is that the way you see things right now, or is BC kind of turning around and being more of a conservative?
We're trying to turn that around. It'll be the big cities that are screwing it up for us. So Victoria, Vancouver, they're very woke cities. So the West here in BC needs some work, but I think I see seeds of hope to bring conservatism to the West Coast here. When I've been to 3 Pierre Poilievre rallies here on Vancouver Island, and it's jam-packed, lots of enthusiasm, lots of excitement. So we're hoping that, that there's a political change here in the next election.
So what was it like? I think it was a week or two ago, maybe a month ago, I saw you on a plane with Chrystia Freeland. So how did that happen? What was that all about?
Well, don't you know, I'm a paid influencer by the Liberals secretly, even though 100% of my content is anti-lib conservative content. People had a field day with that one. That was a total fluke. So what happened was my boss said, we're going to this conference. He booked my flights. Before I flew out, I just chose to change my seats to aisle seats. And I just went blindly, boom, 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 aisle, aisle, aisle. And on my last leg of the flight, I sit down in my seat that I chose. And literally right there is the Deputy Prime Minister reading her paper. She's got her phone. And I sit down right next to her. And I'm like, oh, snap. What do I do?
So did she recognize you, or?
Okay, so I thought that she might, considering like my account on Twitter, it's kind of a well-known Canadian account that posts conservative content. I troll the libs quite hard sometimes, including Freeland, including Trudeau, including the Liberal Party account on Twitter. And so I thought maybe she might, but she was completely oblivious. The only reason I thought she might is because she was really hiding in her newspaper really, really hard. And so I thought maybe she was expecting an ambush because she knows that I troll the libs, but I was on a metal tube on a plane. I didn't want to get air-marshaled off of there. So I was on my best behavior under the advisement of some really senior people that I know and trust in the conservative independent media sphere. I literally furiously texted people, what do I do? What's the protocol? And they just said, well, considering it's on a plane, you don't necessarily want to bust out a camera and ambush her. That might not work out very well. And I had a conference to get to. I didn't want to jeopardize that. I had kids to come home to on Friday. I didn't want to be stuck in a jail cell without a lawyer, all those things. So I just decided to do the funny troll, did the selfie, said wave to my followers on Twitter, which I thought was hilarious, hilariously polite.
I thought it was hilarious too. I mean, I obviously knew you were joking when you were doing it. I can't believe anyone took you seriously. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
they took me seriously. So they ran a whole list of conspiracy theories about me. They just went on a tangent, and no matter what anyone would say, they're just like, no, it's just too much of a coincidence. And they pointed to my boss, who had a selfie with her as a joke at some point that was very similar to mine. Oh, well, like, what are the chances that they're on the plane? And she's a paid liberal shill, and all these things. It was hilarious to witness.
So, how long was the flight?
It was about an hour.
It was about an hour. And did you guys have any conversation at all, or?
Well, just the things that I did, I trolled her.
Yeah. Okay, that's hilarious. So you went to another conference I saw though, with Tucker Carlson. That would have been a few months back, I think. Um, that was in Calgary where you came. Hey, was it
Yes, so
Calgary?
it was Calgary, yeah.
Yeah. That looked like it was amazing.
That was a really fun event for sure. Very high energy, lots of people came. All the familiar conservative personalities were there. Danielle Smith spoke, obviously. Jordan Peterson
Yeah,
joined.
I was going to ask you
Amazing.
about him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a really fun event, and I was a little bit pushy to try and get in and see if I could either speak with Tucker briefly or maybe take a picture with Jordan, which I ended up doing, and that was really fun. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What did you like? What were people most talking about after the conference? Though, were they talking about like a particular message that Tucker had, or what Danielle said, or what was kind of like the big takeaway or the big winner?
I think the big takeaway from that was it was a short part of Tucker's speech when he said, "Don't be afraid to just mock these people because they take themselves so seriously, you know, and they'll accuse you of ridiculous things like microaggressions and hate speech and, oh, you're a bigot if you say this." He just said mock them. And that was I think that was a really poignant message to deliver to Canadians because it's true. They take themselves so seriously and it's so easy to just troll them. So just mock them for their cry bully ways, their censorship loving communist ways.
Yeah, I agree. Like at some point, mocking is appropriate, and I think we've kind of hit that point, or we probably hit that point a long
It's
time
what
ago.
I do on Twitter all day long. I just laugh at them.
So Danielle was at the conference as well. She's been very very popular in Alberta. I think popular in Canada as well. What was kind of the big message that she had there for the people who went?
She had a really good general conservative message. I believe she highlighted, the need for energy, Canadian energy, to be promoted. I was doing a little bit of work while she was speaking because I was there in a work function as well. So I don't, my main focus was when Tucker was delivering a speech as well as Jordan. So unfortunately, I didn't get to pay super close attention when Daniel was speaking. But whenever that woman speaks, she's brilliant. She handles reporters so well. She is so, she's very capable. She's great.
Yeah, so I've met Jordan in person before, and we actually know each other a little bit. I don't know if I should really say that, but I know, and I've been on Michaela's podcast before and stuff like that, so I know the family just a little bit. But when he was at the conference, did he just kind of talk about like conservative values, or did he also sort of get into his books and sort of the other things that he kind of preaches?
I don't recall the books. The format was very interesting. They were trying to keep questions and answers because Brett Wilson was hosting and asking questions. I don't know if you know who Brett Wilson is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know of him
Yeah.
anyway.
So they were just trying to have this fun, short, interesting format, and it was really fun. Like you're asking me to kind of dig my memory
Yeah.
real here because it was several months ago, but it was just overall enjoyable. Lots of laughter. Tucker Carlson made fun of CBC being in the building, and he's like, come have an interview, we'll record it and unedited, put it on air, because they were so critical of him. So it was really fun. It was really fun energy conference format. I loved it.
And you said that you've worked with a lot of different like conservative media in Canada now. I think like the bigger, or some of the bigger platforms anyway, are like, people know True North, Rebel News. Like, what are maybe some of the ones that people don't know about, or what are some of the conservative accounts that you feel like a lot of people are missing out on?
Well, I would just say support any conservative independent outlet in Canada. So yeah, the big ones you mentioned, Rebel News, True North. I work with the Counter Signal, and based out of Alberta, great independent outlet. I have so much fun doing graphics for them because I get to choose exactly the still shot of Trudeau with the silliest possible look on his face. So that's always fun. Before the Counter Signal, I did some work with the Post Millennial. There's the Western Standard. There's lots of great independent outlets out there. Canada Proud is a new one, although they're not quite your typical outfit. That's a outlet. That's a good one.
Yeah,
there's lots.
Yeah, we are Canada Proud. I think I follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, they do great video content.
Yeah, no, they do. That kind of just started recently, though. I think the video stuff. I think they mostly had, or maybe they had videos before, but like the girls going back and forth and stuff like that. I think that's like a relatively new thing that they've been doing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's newer, and I actually know one of the girls that does work for them. Yeah, I've connected with her before going to the conference in Ottawa recently.
Yeah, no, they've done super well. Like, people always share their stuff with me all the time. Andrew Lawton, I've had him on a couple times on the show. He works with True North, and he does really, really well speaking. Like, I'm not sure if you've spoken with him before or seen him speak, but he's a fantastic speaker.
He is phenomenal. Actually, when I was at the Canada Strong and Free conference in Ottawa, our booth with the Counter Signal was neighbors with Andrew Lawton and True North, and they were conducting interviews. They had the whole setup. So yeah, he is really well spoken. He's a great host. They were doing it right there live, and I was just really impressed with how off the cuff he can just carry a conversation. He's a powerful speaker.
Yeah, it's crazy actually. Every time I talk to him, I'm like, oh my God, I'm definitely gonna not sound as smart as this guy, but that's okay. We're gonna do the podcast anyway.
That's okay. Yeah.
So in terms of Pierre Poilievre getting this massive lead, like, I know we talked about it a little bit, but it's always, again, like the big cities that seem to drag down the conservatives, and that's true here in Ontario. Like, it seems to be people mostly in the GTA who vote for, liberals. So like, why do you think that trend is like, and it almost seems like, and I know that in other countries, you may say, you can say the same thing in, say in the States, but I feel like in Canada, it's like it's worse because it's always like all the big cities, but at least in the States, it's like some of the big cities are still like conservative, but in Canada, it's like you basically have, Alberta, but besides that, I wouldn't say there's any other like cities at, besides Calgary and Edmonton in Alberta, I wouldn't say there's any other cities in Canada that are, conservative.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't really have any serious theories that I've kind of thought through about why the cities are woke. I want to say maybe it's just because it's one big glass concrete jungle and they're not out in nature and they're not touching grass enough. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is, a lot to just living. Like, people who live a simpler life just tend to be more conservative, so I think that, there's something to like a rural life, being just a little bit simpler. And when you have a simpler life, you just tend to have more conservative values. And for whatever reason, it just seems to like ring true, in my opinion, like more in Canada than in the United States and maybe other countries as well. But
Canada is more left than the States. We are the canary in the coal mine for the States. And I've heard several, well-seasoned pundits mention this. It's actually the few words when I exchanged with Tucker, I said, you guys need to be paying attention to what's happening here, because you're just a few years, behind us. What the trends that you see in Canada now is the trends that you'll be seeing in the States a few years later. And when I did a brief interview with one of the Gateway Pundit hosts, she was talking about a carbon tax possibly arriving in the States, copying Canada. So I said to them, which is, like I said, which is what I briefly discussed with Tucker, is we are the warning bell for the States because we are more left. And I don't know why that is. Honestly, like I said, I haven't seriously looked into why that is. I just know that it is the case. But maybe we can turn that around in this upcoming election, because have you seen the numbers?
the numbers are crazy. But for people who haven't seen them, maybe just inform the audience.
Yeah, so the latest poll that I saw from Canada Polling had the Conservative Party of Canada with just a ridiculous lead. I think it was plus 100 seats. And it looks like it's a very real possibility that the Liberals, if these numbers are representative, might not even form official opposition in the next election.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So I've never seen it like this. I know lots of talk about people saying, I've never seen it. This is crazy. There was a guy who does map graphics in terms of how people are going to vote, and it's just blue across the board.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Canadians want to see, because a lot of people are really upset recently about, obviously the carbon tax, but now we're feeling it. Like, people are posting pictures like crazy. I see it all the time on Twitter, online, with the gas prices, what they were, a few months ago, what they were now. Like, is that something that has been like a topic of conversation in the independent media that you've been working with? Is this carbon tax?
Oh, yeah. Carbon tax is a huge focus. The gas prices is another big sore issue for us. The prices are back to pandemic levels when everything was so ridiculously expensive. The carbon tax instantly made a difference. Everything has gone up. I've noticed it while shopping for groceries. I have 2 kids and it's just me and them, and our grocery bill is just expanding and growing. It's painful.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people are getting hit the most, is with the grocery bill, and then also too with housing. And from my understanding too, where you are in BC, you guys are hit with probably one of the worst housing crises. Is that correct?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I might have to find a new place to live because my landlord is selling, and I've looked briefly at what's out there, and rent prices have nearly doubled. So when Poilievre says...
Doubled in how long?
So I first moved in here about 7 years ago. So 7 years.
7 years, that's crazy.
Yeah, all pretty much during Trudeau's reign of terror.
Yeah, that would be exactly during his time.
Exactly, yeah.
Because he came in, I think, in 2015. So.
But it's not his fault. It's all Harper's fault. He's had almost 9 years to turn the ship around, but everything that's wrong with us right now, it's all Harper's fault. Don't you know?
Well, I think that's going to be his theme for a long time, but I think that's going to run out pretty soon. People are obviously seeing it according to the polls that you just said. But yeah, we're feeling it in Ontario too. Like, there's some crazy stories, like in Vaughan, so that's like a suburb of Toronto. There's people that have lit their houses on fire and ran away because they don't feel like they can afford the home anymore. And there's been some times when they've had cameras and they've caught them. So yeah, that's
crazy.
It's pretty crazy. So people are getting really desperate all over. And I see too, it's amazing that they're doing it, but Amazon now, you might have seen, are making these small homes, so you can basically order a house off of Amazon now because like a tiny little house because they think that that's what, they literally think that there's going to be a market for that. And they're probably right because, a lot of people are hurting. And unfortunately, it's because of, a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Just also too, very curious, like when you're around all these conservative people, do they talk much about Bitcoin?
You know what? No,
They don't, eh?
no, not
Because
really.
Pierre's pretty big into it. I think, he used to be anyway a few years ago pretty big into Bitcoin. And it does have like, I don't want to say like conservative values, but the essence of Bitcoin is that like, we're not going to let the government control our money. We're going to have our own currency and we're not going to let the government just print its own money, right? So in many ways, like, but again, I understand not everyone just has the money to like buy Bitcoin, especially, during these days. But I was just wondering if it came up, but I could see it potentially coming up more, in the conservative circle because it does seem to have like, anti kind of government, sector to it in some way.
Yeah, I hope so because we can't sustain things the way they are with this fiat currency that they're turning out. Money printer go brrr, like well, that's why everything is so expensive too. They printed a bunch of money. What was that thing with Trudeau? I believe he racked up more debt by himself for Canada than the combined previous prime ministers put together. Like that's how much this guy screwed us with this fiat currency that we have. So I hope it becomes more popular. I don't know too much about crypto. I know a few Bitcoin enthusiasts, and I've seen it climb. I've seen the price go. Whew. So whoever invested in it is cleaning up. That's for sure. Good for them. We'll see. Whenever there is something that the government cannot control, they will not rest until they do control it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it unfolds, but I hope so.
So what's next for Kat Kanada?
So I'm working with the organizers of We Unify. I don't know if you've heard. We are working on putting together a conference this coming June with lots of speakers. There's going to be, all the doctors that you'll know, Dr. Peter McCullough, Jay Bhattacharya, Drew Pinsky, a bunch of conservative internet personalities. Rebel News is coming. And so I'm volunteering my time and my social media presence to promote the event. It's called the Reclaiming Canada Conference. It's, I believe, their third or fourth annual one, which will be happening in Victoria, BC. And that's going to be super fun because it's a 3-day event. There's option for meeting, all the personalities that are coming at a dinner. There's all kinds of ticket formats. So that's going to be super, super fun. So I'm really looking forward to that because...
When's that?
So it's in June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd put on by We Unify. WeUnify.ca is where people can go to check it out. And, they're in talks with some really big names. Maybe not for this coming one, but for next one, they're hoping to secure Jordan Peterson, James Lindsay, all the famous internet personalities that you can think of to be there. It's kind of like Take Back Alberta meets Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. So there's going to be government there, there's going to be media personalities there's going to be all kinds of business leaders there. The organizer has a vision for this conference to start traveling across Canada, and political leaders will be born at these events. It's going to be really exciting, really fun, and we're hoping to literally turn the ship of Canada around with this conference, and by taking it further and getting more people involved in all these things. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's cool. And that's awesome that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is there and Dr. Peter McCullough. I've had both of them on the show before. But my friend Rav Aurora, so he does the podcast with Jay, The Illusion of Consensus. They have a podcast together. So
nice.
I bet Rav will be there. So I'm going to message him about this. Maybe I'll show up. You never know.
You should definitely be there, because it's going to be just like the recent conference in Ottawa, and it might be even bigger, because there's the capacity for 1,500 people there. And as I said, you can come for a day, you can come for all 3 days, you can come for the VIP events, you can, network, we can catch up. It's going to be live streamed. It's going to be done in the wokest city in Canada, as a way to stick it to them and say, conservative movement is here. It's coming to the West Coast. It's going to spread across the country. And we're reclaiming Canada from, the grips of censorship, the grips of tyranny, the grips of authoritarianism. We are done.
Okay, there is no better way to end a podcast than that, except you still got to give out your socials.
What do you mean? Just shout out my socials?
Yeah, just let people know how they can follow you on Twitter, where they can follow you online, and how they can utilize your services, get in contact with you if they want to get their socials organized, all that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a social media coordinator. I do social media for clients who are too busy to do it themselves. I also obviously use it myself quite a bit. You can find me at Kat Kanada _TM on all the socials. Canada with a K. Yeah, yes. Canada with a K. I also have a small YouTube channel. People can check out some of the things I've done on there. I'm hoping to expand into conversations on YouTube. I was doing just conservative little videos, but I'm trying to do something similar to this myself at some point. And so you can find me on all the major platforms. So Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, I'm there with the handle at Kat Kanada _TM.
Amazing. Okay, Kat, thank you so much for sharing everything today. Really had a good time chatting with you. And thank you to the audience for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back again soon.
Thanks for having me.